Hello and welcome back to another Archaeo-Scope. This series is kind of like an inverted Questions of Doom, where rather than you sending me questions to try and answer, I put a question out there for you in the form of a video, and together we try to come up with some sort of response, some thoughts to do with that topic, and hopefully we all come away learning something new which we might not have considered on our own. So it's an opportunity for debate and hopefully for learning. And today's video is actually inspired by several questions I've been receiving over the past 3 days actually, and that is to do with the Ragnarök. This is the end of days according to Norse mythology. It's kind of like Armageddon in Christianity. It's when the 9 realms will sort of merge, and there'll be this sort of blurring of boundary, a shattering of the rules, when the gods and the giants will have the last epic battle. Fenrir the wolf will be loosed to wreak havoc. Hela herself, the goddess, will rise and wage war upon the Aesir, the gods. All of this really being led by Loki, who will rise essentially on a ship made of toenails out of the sea, and this will lead to the destruction of Valhalla, of Odin, of Thor, of Freya, of all of these, Heimdall. All the gods of Norse mythology essentially are doomed. They're destined to die in this last epic battle, which is known as the Ragnarök, the doom of the gods, according to some. So this dramatic event, it has got some people worried. And the reason why it's got some people worried is that they seem to think it's going to happen on the 22nd of February 2014, so in 4 days' time, a couple of days' time. I was like, what? I mean, knowing what I do about Viking and Norse mythology, I found it very surprising, the concept of there actually being a day linked with, a date assigned to this event, even a friend and colleague of mine has actually been somewhat sucked into this notion. They actually published recently as a known fact that, did you know that in a couple of days the Ragnarök will occur? And I thought, what? And I looked into this, and certain newspapers had picked up the story, and they were saying, will the world end in 100 days? This was around about 100 days ago, or more recently, is the world destined to end this week in the Ragnarök? It almost feels like another Mayan apocalypse, 2012 phenomenon kind of situation. And again, I was what's going on? I was very confused, until I sort of started to dig a little bit further into it, and it turns out that all of this actually stems from a press release made by the Jorvik Viking Centre back in January, talking about the world will end in 100 days, Ragnarök, the Viking apocalypse, predicted for the 22nd of February 2014. They talk about experts in Norse mythology from the Jorvik Viking Centre having predicted and landed on this day as being the date for the end of all things. Experts are predicting the day, so the end of the world will take place on the 22nd of February 2014. And it seems that this is really starting to gather pace, not surprisingly, because the Jorvik Viking Festival is currently on down in York. Lots of people are having a wonderful time, and actually I almost wish I was there. It's always a great time to be in York, especially if you love this period, either reenacting or studying it. There's a great opportunity just to soak yourself a little bit in life 1,000 years ago. So that's basically where it stems from. There isn't a Ragnarök that's coming. This is a press release. It's a publicity stunt by the Jorvik Viking Centre, by the museum, in order to bring attention upon the Jorvik Viking Festival. But what's wrong with this, you may well say? What's wrong with this? Well, I suppose what's wrong with it is the fact that people have been allowed, as it were, to take it very seriously, it seems. As I say, my friend and colleague thought that this was actually true, that some Norse experts had come up with this date. Newspapers are reporting it with a less than tongue-in-cheek quality, again, very much like the Mayan apocalypse story. But the problem is, though, is the Mayan apocalypse story, the 2012 phenomenon, was actually based on actual calculations. I mean, misguided, but nonetheless real calculations based on calendars, Mayan calendars. So the idea of 2012 had some mathematical basis behind it. This is literally just 3 or 4 people in an office down in York coming up with that date, because that's the pinnacle of their event down in York. This is nothing to do with Norse mythology. And in that sense, it feels a little bit crass. Now, I know the guys who would have come up with this particular headline. I know certainly one of them in particular wouldn't really see any problem with it. And to a certain extent, there isn't any problem with it, because they know the tone in which they've released this. It's, in many ways, it's very clearly tongue-in-cheek, the way that they've written it, the way that they've put it out there. But they're not really taking any responsibility for the fact that they are the Jorvik Viking Centre. They are the authority, as it were, in Britain for many people on all things Viking. And in some ways it feels a little bit like if the Royal Observatory were to say, "The sun's about to explode!" By the way, come down to the Royal Observatory and get involved in our sun exploding event. Yeah, it's going to be really good fun. People would freak out, because the Royal Observatory aren't expected to say things like "the sun is about to explode" in anything other than a fairly serious way. When the Jorvik Viking Centre talks about Norse mythological experts, experts in Norse mythology, it's expected that they're not taking the mick, that they may well actually be basing this on actual research, actual evidence, because after all, the museum is based at its core on actual archaeology, on an actual find. And that's why I'm a little bit frustrated with this. This is why I think it's a slightly dodgy situation to be in. Now, of course, it is worthwhile touching on the standards of journalism here. If the journalists had been a little bit more rigorous, they would have gone beyond the press release, or rather, at the very least, deconstructed that press release and seen the tone in which it was meant. But instead, for example, newspapers like The Mirror have published this and said, experts in Norse mythology have predicted the Ragnarök will occur. And other newspapers have these very serious headlines and a fairly serious tone to the story, which basically I imagine comes from a lack of willingness to research any deeper than the surface, but also as well, I suppose, just a general lack of historical and archaeological literacy. They don't quite know how to discern the truth from a publicity stunt, how to discern almost like a Viking in-joke, I suppose, from a real, genuine, scary event, or even, sorry, more to the point, a real, genuine, scary prediction. I'm not saying that they actually believe this is going to happen, but it seems that they think that this is a serious prediction, a bit like the 2012 phenomenon. There's also the element of it being a marketing campaign. I'm slightly uncomfortable, I have to say, with the idea of any culture's end of the world scenario being used simply to market your party, simply to market your event. Now, that said, though, as I say, the Jorvik Viking Festival is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I really should try and get to the next one. Incidentally, actually, a friend of mine, Lawrence the Cathedral Licker, you will have seen him on this channel before, is reading Beowulf in Old English at the Guild Hall in York at the moment. So he's well worth going to see. So there's lots of really good, meaty events to go and get involved in. But it feels as though, more broadly speaking, we're sort of living in an age when very little is untouchable, as it were. I mean, for example, I just drove Mrs. Soup into work, and we saw an advert for a bingo website, and on the poster there was essentially the Greek pantheon, and these gods were dressed very, very badly, actually, very loose, weird costumes, and it's all about, the gods of bingo have arrived. So it feels as though, actually, especially when it comes to the past, we're not very good at actually respecting other people's beliefs, or having a sense of decency when it comes to other people's beliefs. And I think this may well be slightly symptomatic of that. But beyond all of that, anyway, I mean, I suppose my question is, What do you think? What do you guys think about this relationship between a museum, a publicly respected and internationally respected authority on Viking life in Britain, and the result that people from their marketing campaign are taking it fairly seriously, that there's a genuine academic prediction that the end of the world will come in a matter of days, in less than a week? What do you think of this? Do you think that it's actually people's own fault? It's actually the press's own fault for not taking this with a pinch of salt? Or do you think that the museum itself, that the people behind the press release, should take more responsibility for their wording? When they say experts on Norse mythology, we know that they're being ambiguous because it's meant to be a bit like a practical joke. They're sort of saying, oh yes, unnamed experts. But it seems actually that an awful lot of people aren't buying into that joke. They're taking it very seriously. So what do you think? Do you think this is a little bit crass? Or do you think actually that the people need to be able to, the people in general need to learn how to discern between fact and fiction, between marketing campaigns and genuine academic research? I'm not really sure which side of the fence I sit on, because my point about the Royal Observatory saying the sun's about to explode, that would be grossly irresponsible, especially if all they were trying to do was to get people to come down to the gift shop to buy more Royal Observatory stuff, as it were. So on the one hand, that is grossly irresponsible, but on the other hand, as I say, perhaps this tells us more about the way in which people read these press releases and the way in which people are not necessarily able, especially when it comes to archaeology and history, to separate out the meat from the bones. So to actually take some of the frilliness off and pare it down to some facts and see what those facts mean. And in this case, the facts were fairly obviously pointing to a marketing campaign. And in that sense, well done. Well done to Jorvik. They've done a very good job at marketing this year's Jorvik Viking Festival. But I just can't help but wonder if there's something's gone wrong with this particular campaign, especially when, as I say, colleagues of mine have been drawn into thinking this is a very serious prediction. So what do you think? Do you think archaeologists should just relax about this? Do you think I should just calm down about it? Or do you think actually maybe I have a point that this ties in with more generalised use and abuse of history and heritage in media, and the misunderstanding of history and heritage in media, and then how that trickles down out to the public, and the public therefore aren't given the tools to be able to discern what is actual academia, what is actual research, and what is simply a press release, what is simply a publicity stunt. As I say, I'm sort of on the fence on this one. I'd really like to hear what you think, so please do comment below. And if you do actually think that Ragnarök is coming, I'd love to hear if you have a reason behind that belief. Why is that? But more to the point though, if you have any thoughts or theories or suggestions as to how this kind of relationship between the public, the press, and museums or academics can actually be improved, I'd also love to read those as well. So please do comment below. I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes. Anyway, Ragnarök or not, I intend to have a good week, and until next time, as ever, please do take care. Bye bye.